What is the greatest character introduction in One Piece? For this video, we're going to try to work our way there by ranking the top 10 best introductions in the entire story. Now, of course, I did a video about 2 months ago with the same concept, but after engaging in the comments with a lot of you and hearing a lot of your opinions, it made me feel I should tweak my list a little bit, especially because there was a few really good introductions that just happened to slip my mind last time. So you might be surprised to find that from last time, some are higher, some are lower, some aren't even here anymore, and some are just entering the list. But with all that aside, let's get straight into it. Starting things off with number 10, I have Monkey D. Dragon, and his introduction came at a time when Luffy and the crew were trying to escape the Marines, Smoker, and Tashigi. Around that time, there were all these weird occurrences like Luffy getting saved by lightning when he was about to be executed by Buggy, and then getting saved by this huge gust of wind when Smoker had finally caught him. All these impossible situations, and Luffy just happened to get out with no issue. In the moment, we had no idea what was going on, but after the fact, it becomes increasingly clear that this was Dragon's doing. Every time he appears, there seems to be some sort of weather-related situation that helps somebody out when they're in dire straits. And that's what Dragon represents as a whole, liberating people, giving them their freedom back. The crazy thing is, Smoker was one of the biggest threats in the series early on, but Dragon made him feel so minuscule. It's been an entire 24 years since he was introduced, but we don't even know the basic things like whether or not he has a devil fruit. At the same time, it's been very heavily implied that he has some sort of wind logia or a weather-related paramecia. Slowly but surely, we're getting closer and closer to that reveal. Now, at number 9, I have the Naval Admiral Kuzan. He was the very first admiral that we had revealed in the series, and it was also one of the first times we had the crew fight together in a battle that was completely hopeless. And it helped us get a little sneak peek into Kuzan's personality because he wasn't the type of admiral to completely lash out on pirates or do everything in his power to try to annihilate them. He had a soft side to him, and he would take the situation slow and try to analyze it and see how people would react. We also learned early on that he had a very close relationship with Smoker, and it was the talks between them that prompted Kuzan to spare the crew because of what Luffy did in Alabasta. And although it was covered up by the government and they took all the credit, Smoker was still there to give the real account of what happened, which shows us overall that as much corruption as there is in the world government, there is also some people that are closer to good, even at the very highest level, even among the admirals. And it creates a lot of interesting dynamics down the road because it blurs the lines between friend or foe, who's an ally and who's an adversary. Going into number 8, I have Silver Israeli, the right-hand man of the Pirate King, and he was introduced all the way back in Sabaody. One of the first things we learned about him is that he was 100 times stronger than Luffy was at the time. Although you can see this is an expression of sorts, it really does put things into perspective because by this time, Luffy had gone through Arlong, Crocodile, Ennu, Rob Lucci, Moria, Oars, all these people, and yet he was still so far away from the top. Not even just the top, this was an old man pushing 80, yet he was still this powerful. Really also introduced us to very significant forms of haki, one of the most important being armament haki, because he showed us that you can attack a Loge if you have the ability to use this form of haki. Before then, these types of devil fruit users seemed to be invincible, but we saw through Rayleigh's fight against Kizaru that that is not at all the case. He even gave Kizaru some trouble. Kizaru was running through all of the supernova easier than easy mode, but then Rayleigh comes and stops him in his tracks. This was Oda telling us this is what it means to be the Dark King. This is what it means to be the right hand of the Pirate King and one of the strongest to ever live in the One Piece world. Jumping into number 7 is someone I did not have here last time, and that is Zorro. Zorro was the first major introduction that we had in the entire series, and till this day, there are a lot of people that will tell you it was this very introduction that made them want to commit and keep watching the series and see what more this character had to offer. Zorro was a bit of an anomaly in the beginning. People didn't know whether he'd be a good guy or a bad guy, and whether or not he would be Luffy's first villain, because the way he was presented, you would think as soon as Luffy tried to approach this guy, he would kill him on sight the moment he had the chance. That's exactly what Kobe thought. You even had people like Alvida putting him up on his pedestal of sorts. Very quickly, in the same chapter that we met him, you begin to realize this guy isn't bad at all, or rather he's not what people say he is. When Luffy met him, he was imprisoned by Captain Morgan for killing Hamapo's wolf, but then we realized the reason he was in prison is because he saved a little girl's life by killing that wolf, and that little girl felt so indebted that she came back with rice balls that she made because she knew he hadn't eaten for over a week and he must have been very hungry, and this meant a lot to him. Of course, he didn't show it at first, but then later on, he made sure to let her know how grateful he was. The most interesting thing that captivated fans the most is Zorro's fighting style because it was unlike anything we've ever seen in anime or manga or even fiction actually. Usually it's the case where someone is wielding 1 or 2 swords and maybe even having a 3rd sword on the side, but never has it been the case where someone is wielding 3 swords at the same time, fighting with all of them. At least not somebody with only 2 arms, because what are they going to hold the 3rd sword with? And then it's shown to us how he's able to do this while holding the 3rd sword in his mouth, even taking on several Marine soldiers at the same time and overpowering them with ease. He even took on the main villain and cut him down after he tried to sneak Luffy. One of the most important things that still has us scratching our heads to this day is his flashback with Kuina. We learn that's where he gained the motivation to become the world's strongest swordsman from, but we don't know things like why did Kuina die or how did she die. This has actually led to some people in the community to say that he has a bad backstory and he's badly written. I do not believe that to be the case. I think that Zorro is very well written, and we can see that with the way he's developed from his introduction. He fulfills his role grow to perfection, being able to balance his dreams and his duty and commitment to Luffy. And all of this has propelled him to the point that he even came very close to winning the One Piece popularity poll, at one point leading voting for weeks. That's just how great of a character he is, and that's just how impactful his introduction was. And next at number 6 we have Akainu, the current fleet admiral. The first time we met him was in the Robin flashback at Ohara. Straight away we knew he was the no-nonsense kind of guy. All that mercy and all those shades of benevolence that we saw with Kuzan, there was none of that with Akainu. And then once you fast forward to his first introduction in the present day during Marineford, you see just how committed he is to the goal. Akainu was part of the single most pivotal moment in the entire series. In fact, he was the direct cause. Were it not for him, the main cast may not be where they are today. Ace had finally escaped from Marine captivity and it looked like he was about to get away, but Akainu baited him into his own death. And by killing Ace, Akainu set Luffy on this path of self-reflection. He started questioning his whole life as a pirate, having no idea what to do. And the success One Piece had after all of this was just unimaginable. Through this string of events caused by Akainu, One Piece went from a very good series to perhaps an all-time great. And the proof is in the numbers. Marineford was setting record after record, month after month. Currently, there's this debate whether or not Luffy will fight Akainu, will he be the final villain, will he play an important role along the way, and all these other things. Whatever the case might be, I think there is significant setup between Luffy and Akainu, and we'll eventually see what that yields. At number 5, I have the world's strongest swordsman, and the ultimate end goal for one of our main characters. Mihawk was undoubtedly the first person in the series to give us a real taste of what these top tiers are about. He left Jin absolutely terrified with how he was able to annihilate Don Krieg's fleet of 50 ships with absolutely no effort whatsoever. And this was just something he did out of boredom, something to pass the time. It was to the point that they thought there's no way one man should be capable of something like this. He has to have a devil fruit, because how is this possible? Don Krieg was someone who branded himself as the world's strongest man, so the only way possible in his mind for someone to accomplish something like this is to have an ability that he did not have access to. Of course, it was nothing like that. This man was just a demon with insane sword ability. To make matters worse, we saw how powerful Zorro was early on in the beginning of the story, and Mihawk still made an absolute ant out of him. Mind you, this was Zorro going all out, using all 3 of his swords and using his strongest attacks, and Mihawk defeated him with a mere butter knife. Honestly, it was to the point that it felt like Zorro should just give up his dream, because how could he possibly reach this insane level? That defeat proved to be important for Zorro's growth, and in the process he gained Mihawk's respect, especially because of his resilience and his unwillingness to turn his back on his opponent, even while staring death right in the face. And this is where we learn that Mihawk isn't just this all-powerful brute that goes around terrorizing people for fun. He enjoys learning about people and seeing what makes them tick. Developed an interest in both Luffy and Zorro, and it extended all the way through Marineford when he was trying to figure out why people gravitate to Luffy and put everything on the line just to help him. And now at number 4, I have the highest admiral on this list, and that's Kizaru. Kizaru's introduction was one of the most memorable in the entire series. What he took on all those supernova and absolutely decimated them is something that lives in our heads rent-free. He looked so cool doing it, moving at some of the most insane speeds that we've ever seen, dropping lines like speed is weight. The way he came in, the way he entered Saba Uri, standing on top of a cannonball, call it one of the most epic entrances in the entire series, somehow feels like a complete understatement. And the replay value is just crazy. I can watch this introduction over and over and over again. More than anything, it's the fact that Kizaru always seems so carefree all the time. He just seems high and not really caring about what's going on. What about when it's time to get serious? What about when Kizaru actually puts energy and effort at a maximum? I feel like that's what we're getting in the manga right now. Luffy even remarked, we're not the same as we were in Saba Uri. We're 100 times stronger now. So assuming Oda doesn't off-screen this, I feel like Gear 5 Luffy against a serious Kizaru is going to make for one of the best fights in the entire series. Now coming in at number 3, I have Blackbeard. Luffy's first encounter with Blackbeard inside the bar was very telling. They had disagreements over everything. They were constantly trying to one-up each other. It was as simple as Luffy thinking a cherry pie they were having was disgusting, but Blackbeard thought it tasted great. Then Blackbeard thought the drink they were having was disgusting, but then Luffy thought it tasted great. These keen differences that they had ended up being shown in their personality and what they represented overall. Luffy is a symbol of hope and freedom, the sun god. Blackbeard is a symbol of darkness and despair, the Yami Yami user. Luffy is constantly liberating people and giving them their freedom back. Blackbeard is kidnapping and imprisoning people, like he did with Bonnie and eventually Kobe. Luffy does anything and everything he can to make sure his crew survives, while Blackbeard is out here not caring whether his crew dies or not. The biggest thing though is that iconic panel that Blackbeard left us with when he tells the Straw Hats that a man's dreams will never die, because this captures the very essence of the One Piece story, which is dreams and desires. And as much as Blackbeard and Luffy are different, they have the same goal. They have the same sort of drive to propel them to the top, despite what other people might think or say to talk down their dreams. And now at number 2, I have Kaido, the king of the beasts. For many people, this is the best introduction in the series. Without a doubt, it has the flair and the wow factor. Kaido was introduced as someone whose hobby was suicide, and yet he constantly fails. He tried to leap to his death from the Sky Island and he survived. This is a man who escaped prison dozens of times from the world government. He sank several prison vessels, and every time they tried to put him to death, the weapons they tried to use just broke on him. He was just straight up invincible, and the fact that he had this giant-like frame and had this beast-like figure just made him that much more terrifying, especially the way he stood up from the crater that he made and stood over the supernova. And now, the #1 greatest introduction in One Piece is Whitebeard. First time we saw him was when Shanks sent Rockstar to deliver a message to him, and we saw him hooked up to those machines with the title, The Strongest Man in the World. I can imagine the first time reading this, maybe there's a little doubt there's a little questioning, like, this old guy hooked up to all these machines is also clearly sick. This is the strongest in the world. This is top 1. But when we really got to know him was when he pulled up in Marineford in order to save Ace. Got to see his strength and why he was so feared, why Sengoku even thought, with as massive as a force that the Marines had, he believed they could still lose this war because this man had the power to destroy the world. And despite all of that, despite all this unlimited power and reach that Whitebeard had, he didn't want to take over the world. He didn't want to become Pirate King. He stood in front of the throne instead of taking it for himself, because he was still widely regarded as the king of the seas. What he wanted more than anything was to protect the family that he spent decades building. He also went into Marineford knowing that this was his place to die. But that didn't deter him or slow him down. He still fought relentlessly until his dying breath, ensuring that his sons made it out of Marineford alive. And as much as Ace's death and Ace's story had an impact on One Piece's overwhelming success during Marineford, Whitebeard did too. He had what many consider the greatest death in manga and what I believe to be the greatest introduction in the story. But those are all my thoughts, and that's my top 10 greatest introductions in One Piece. Tell me what you think though and how you feel about this updated list. As always, comment all your thoughts down below and I'll be right there engaging with you guys as always. But also don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for more videos just like this one.